of the meeting. This is a recorded meeting so that once we finish, we can provide this meeting to planning staff and they can post it online on their website under the neighborhood meetings. My name is Greg Gamble. I'm a landscape architect and land planner, and I'm representing Highwoods and CenterCal, who are proposing a joint venture at Ovation. This is a PUD master plan. And in a PUD master plan, the city of Franklin recognizes that there can be some special opportunities, some special modifications to the zoning ordinance that may align with the brand of a PUD, may bring something special to the master plan that otherwise would not be permitted in the city of Franklin. And we're going to be talking about some of those tonight. This meeting may get a little technical at times, but feel free to ask questions. Normally, we ask that participants in a neighborhood meeting save your questions to the end of the meeting. In this particular meeting, I'd like for you to save your question to the end of the discussion about the modification of standards that we are requesting. There are no density increases in this proposed master plan revision. The master plan, development plan revision for Ovation, revision 4, which we're going to talk about in a minute, is really specifically about asking for some special modification of standards within the development plan itself. You can ask a question in chat. I have that open and available, and you can also take yourself off mute. So there are some subtle differences between revision 3, which is the current approved development plan, and revision 4, which you're seeing here. The road network of Knolltop Lane, Encore, Topper Trace, those remain the same, but there's some refinement in the building footprint. And so you can see over here at building K1 and M2, if you look at the differences between those footprints on the master plan, you can see some subtle shifts in how those relate specifically to Encore Lane. The first modification of standards that we're going to request from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen has to do with permitting angled parking along internal drives. The internal drives are highlighted here in red, have a red boundary around them. Those include a portion of Knolltop, a portion of Encore Lane, and you can see some of the angled parking that's located along the Central Park and alongside some of the retail stores. This is to allow for some convenient parking, some quick turnover parking, some parking that may be only for 15 to 30 minutes. And most of the parking at Ovation is within parking decks. So you have deck E, deck B, deck H, deck L. These decks are distributed around Ovation to provide convenient places for people are coming to restaurants, shops, or office spaces, or even the residential homes to have convenient places to park. But there might be some times during the week where somebody might want to pop into a coffee shop for 30 minutes, grab a cup of coffee, and hop back in their car. And so these angled parking spaces allow for that. We do have angled parking in Franklin. Gateway Village and Berry Farms are both good examples of where angled parking is located on an internal drive, a private street. Anybody have any questions on that modification of standards before I move on? Okay. The second modification of standards that we're going to be asking for relates to building C. And this is a retail building. It's 1 story. And it will have specific service needs that relate to its use. The city's zoning ordinance says that loading areas should be located to the rear of the building, adjacent to the loading doors. Building C does not have a rear. It has 2 fronts, a front onto the internal drive, a front onto Crothers Parkway, a side along the parking area, and then another side along the entrance drive into that parking area. So because we don't have a rear, we are asking for this loading area to be between the building and Crothers Parkway. To accommodate this loading area, we are going to lower the ground so that the trucks that are making deliveries can access a loading dock, as you can see in this top image. And we are going to screen that with a 10-foot masonry wall and landscape alongside Carruthers Parkway. This will allow us to have pedestrian access at the front along the internal drive and along the back area, which is facing toward the parking lot area. So those will be kind of the main entrance doors along the internal drive and along the back side. Here's a view of what that might look like along Carruthers Parkway. Any questions on this modification of standards before I move on?
Is there a specific tenant we're anticipating is going to need 18-wheelers, or is that just to have it available?
There is a specific tenant, and it could probably be best described as more of a boutique grocery store, small footprint boutique grocery. The modification of standards number 3 is specific to a zoning requirement that front facades shall face a public street, private street, internal drive in that priority. The front facade shall parallel the frontage. We are going to have buildings within the master plan that create areas of pedestrian refuge, pedestrian relief. We're going to have some park spaces out in front of the buildings. And as a result of that, we have added this text that says, except where buildings pull back from being parallel to allow larger pedestrian zones and open spaces. So along Encore Lane, along Knolltop Lane, we have an open space park that will have water features, lawns for watching movies. Along in front of building M2 and K1, we have these little pocket parks. And in order to accommodate those pocket parks, the buildings are not going to parallel the street. So that's a specific modification of standards that we're asking for from that. Any questions there? I'll move on. We have 10 modification of standards for signage. The city's regulations state that signs shall not be irregularly shaped, except for small hanging signs and projecting signs. In the development plan of Ovation, we want to allow those businesses to have their own unique personalities, and a part of that is signage. And so we're asking for irregularly shaped signage to be applied to band signs, canopy signs, development entry signs, monument signs, small hanging and projecting signs, vertical blade signs, and wall signs. So all of the signage that is permitted, pretty much that would go on a building, would be allowed to be an irregularly shaped. So that would be like the Lemonade here, Hats, or even the Virgin Hotel. Any questions there? We'll move to internal illumination. The city's regulation states that exposed neon and LED lights that are visible are prohibited and shall not be incorporated into the design of a principal building. And a lot of these regulations that we have in Franklin that relates to signage obviously are across the entire city. So when we have a unique PUD development, the city allows for these modification of standards to, again, align with the brand of the development. And so this is a request, just like Jenny's Ice Cream at McEwen Northside, to permit neon lighting and LED lighting when used in the channel of the sign letters as numbers, logos, and accent lights. So that's what you're seeing here in these photographs, where it's channelized lettering. Okay. We're asking for a modification of standards to permit what is currently a prohibited sign. And this prohibited sign is a LED or digital wayfinding sign. These signs would be located within the area that you're seeing here highlighted in red. A lot of times these are touchscreen. It allows you to find specific stores or restaurants. It's basically a map that would allow you to kind of locate or find your way through the community here. The next modification of standards is for an LED display screen. This would be located in the Central Park. It would be located on the south side or the side of the building here shown in red that's facing Building G. This Building G is an office building with retail and restaurants on the ground floor. In front of this building, in front of the, I'll call it a movie screen for lack of a better word. In front of the movie screen would be a grand lawn, places with that they could set up chairs, or somebody could picnic out on the lawn, watch a movie at night. It's a part of the kind of entertainment aspects of the park itself. There would likely be some advertising for an event at Ovation. There might be advertising for the local businesses that are within Ovation. And so because it's a part of the advertising, it's considered a sign, and we're asking for a modification of standards for this, the movie screen, so that we can have it as a part of that Central Park space and part of the activation of that space. Any questions so far? We'll move on to band signs. Band signs are allowed at the main entrance for retail storefront and tenant space of the ground floor. We're asking that band signs be permitted for parking garage entrances as well as retail tenant space. We are also asking that band signs be allowed at the entrance points of a paseo, which is a pedestrian walkway between two buildings, or an alleyway where the band sign would span the gap across that alley or across that paseo. Maybe an Ovation branding sign, maybe a sign that names that pedestrian walkway, something to that effect. We're asking for a modification of standards on canopy signs. Right now, you're not allowed to have signage on top of the canopy. We're asking that we have the ability to have that signage on top, as is shown in these photographs here. We're asking for directory signs that they be able to be standalone, not attached to the building. Right now, all directory signs are required to be attached to the building, to the face of the building. When we have some of these larger office buildings, we want to be able to pull that directory sign off into the landscape where it's easy to see from both pedestrians and vehicles. We're asking that small hanging and projecting signs, specifically on those internal drives where we have the storefronts and shops, be able to have signs that are external and or internally illuminated. Vertical blade signs. Right now, there's a maximum of one vertical blade sign per building frontage at a street intersection, and may only be used if no other hanging signs are on the ground floor. We would like to use the vertical blade signs as a signage for residential uses that are on the upstairs above retail and restaurants. And in this particular instance, we would like to have a maximum of one vertical blade sign per building frontage when hanging signs are on the ground floor for tenant spaces below. So a little bit of an exception there on when those vertical blade signs could be used. For wall signs, right now, a painted wall sign, like you're seeing in these photographs below, is the equivalent to a wall sign. The ordinance states that a maximum of one building, that you're allowed to have a maximum of one wall sign per building facade if no band sign exists on the building. We're requesting in this modification of standards to have both a wall sign and a painted sign, so to be able to have two. On the right, then, this is a modification of standards that would allow for 20% of an individual window area to have a painted sign as opposed to 15%. So upping that just 5%. Painted signs are what you're seeing here in these photographs. It could be vinyl, it could be frosted, gold leaf vinyl. There's kind of a variety of items that can be used as window signs. So just an increase in percentage on that one. So these are our 14 modification of standards. They're very subtle changes to the master plan. This is really diving down into the details, but it is a layer of request and approval that's pretty significant to the Ovation master plan, specifically on the internal drives along Encore Lane and Knolltop Lane, to really facilitate the need of some of the restaurants and retailers that are here. Any questions?
Greg, I might make a comment. It's
Yeah,
Bev.
sure.
Um, I thank you for these changes. I think one of the things I continuously ask for is more and better design. And this is in my ward, and I'm just really happy that you've brought a lot of these back, these modifications, because I think it enhances the design of this whole development. Couple of things I'll just point out. I love the angle parking in certain places because it lends itself to quick in and out of stores. A lot of times when you're parallel parking, you pull up alongside of another car, and when you're going back in, people are coming at you, and then they stop the traffic, and it's very difficult sometimes. So angle parking lends itself to people getting in and getting out very quickly. With the backup cameras we have in our cars today, backing out of an angle parking really makes it more safe,
Mm.
I think, even than parallel parking. So I'm glad to see that. Um, the loading dock, I like what you did to accommodate that. Love the pedestrian spaces, the angled buildings, because that lends itself to better design with the angled buildings and the pedestrian spaces, which people keep constantly asking for, and we need more of that innovation. If you
Yeah.
can find any more way to find any other places to put that in, go. I'd like to see that. Okay with the signage and stuff, but and then I understood the wall sign when you were looking at that, the wall sign, the painted sign. I wasn't quite sure I understood that, but then as you spoke, I saw that, sometimes you have a really long building.
That's
And
right.
at one end, you might have a painted sign. At the other end, you might have a wall sign. So I get that. So it's not like it's like plastered up against each other. You're talking about longer buildings and you're breaking it up. And I think it adds to the design too.
Yeah,
So
all of building G is considered one building, building M is one building,
yeah,
so they are long enough where having two wall signs, I think, starts to make sense.
yeah, I do too. Anyway, I really commend you all for thinking outside the box in some of these, and I'm glad because I think it really does enhance the design element of this of Ovation, which I've been asking for a long time. Thanks.
And our team is really getting down to the details early, as opposed to waiting until we're way down the road under construction and then having some knee-jerk reactions to some things. So we're really trying to think through the big picture.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
Is the transit hub with Park and Ride still being considered, and was that going to be on one of the decks closer to Carruthers?
So there's a conversation right now with the larger, bigger umbrella WeGo about them being at the conference center just to the north of here. They've got an easier path that they can kind of get in and out, and it's already being used for that now. And they're taking there's a bus route that you can take from there to the airport. There's going to be local transit within Ovation, and it's more of our trolleys that are going to have specific drop-offs and pickups. Any other final questions? Alderman Caesar, I see you joining now. Happy to run through any of this with you. We are, I think, about to wrap up.
That's fine, Greg. I appreciate the acknowledgement. I'll watch the recap of this, but thanks. Just walked out of another meeting and was a little bit late joining, but thank you for putting this on.
No problem.
Yeah, and Greg, I'd point out, hey, Greg, I'm glad you're here too. I would point out to you, I was just talking to Greg Gamble about this, that I was really happy because I've been pounding home or better design and different elements. So if you go back and listen to the recap, I mentioned angled parking. I mentioned I think the wall and painted signs and pedestrian spaces, especially. And I really do like how you angled those buildings. So
Yeah.
all right, thanks.
Well, I will take a look. Thanks again. Thanks, Bev. And Mr. Gamble, thank you.
Sure. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. Appreciate it. If there are no other final questions. All right. Y'all have a good night. Thank you.